On August 27, 2015, what began as a routine morning would soon turn into a nightmare. 911, your emergency and paramedics. I think he shot everybody. He has a handgun. He's shooting everybody. That gunfire, I'm just so scared. Information about a deadly rampage in a St. Johns County neighborhood. Investigators say James Cawley shot and killed his wife and her best friend. You know, there's 5 children that lost their mothers on that day. Little baseball games are tended with an empty blue chair for Lie to sit him and watch Patrick play. Always take domestic violence seriously. Yet you never know at what point it might escalate. And something happen, like what happened to Amanda, and James Cawley Jr. Carefully selected, their family home in the tranquil community of Mirabella Street, Augustine, Florida, a local celebrated for its upscale resort-style ambiance. This picturesque setting was the backdrop for the life they dreamed of for their children. Rubella's reputation for offering a blend of luxury and convenience was reflected in the Colsey-Mingy perfect existence. Neighbors vividly remember James joyfully playing with their young children. Trey, who was 6 in 2015, and Avery, then just 4. In the quiet safety of their cul-de-sac, the Cawleys were known for their warm and welcoming demeanor, often hosting lively gatherings where the sounds of laughter and camaraderie echoed through their home. However, beneath the surface of this idyllic life, the once close-knit couple began to grow apart. Yet they navigated this distance with a composed grace, never letting their private struggles disrupt the image of harmony they projected to the world. Whatever turmoil existed between them remained behind closed doors, carefully concealed, leaving only the outward appearance of a life filled with joy and perfection. It was precisely because of the seemingly perfect life, the Cawleys' LED, that the events of August 27, 2015, shocked the entire neighborhood to its core. Around 9:00 a.m. on that fateful day, Rachel Hendrick received unsettling news. Something was terribly wrong with her dear friend Amanda Rachel, and Amanda had forged a close bond over the years, having first met at a mutual acquaintances party. Along with Lindy Dobbins, the 3 women had become an inseparable trio, supporting one another through life's ups and downs. Whether it was watching each other's children or simply offering a listening ear, they had become each other's pillars of strength on. That tragic morning, Rachel had just dropped her kids off at school and was heading to a hairdresser friend's house for an appointment. Little did she know that this routine day would be forever marred by the unimaginable events that were unfolding. Events that would shatter the tranquility of their close-knit community and leave lasting scars on those who had shared in the Cawleys' seemingly perfect world. After her hair appointment, Rachel went straight to Amanda's house, only to find the usually immaculate Mirabella home in a state of complete chaos. Amanda had been out the previous night, and when she returned at 90A, she was met with a terrifying sight. Her once pristine home had been ransacked. This was no ordinary break, and nothing was stolen, but everything had been rifled through, torn apart, as if someone was desperately searching for something, perhaps evidence of a hidden secret. The chilling realization that she might be in grave danger likely dawned on Amanda at that moment. It was perhaps this fear that led her to call several friends to her side, seeking safety in numbers. But tragically, safety was an illusion that morning. Inside the home were 4 people: Amanda, Linda Rachel, and Lamar Duberly. Lamar was Amanda's boyfriend, whom she had met in April after formally separating from her husband James. In June, the atmosphere in the house was thick with unease, as the group tried to make sense of the situation, unaware of the imminent danger that was about to strike forever, altering their lives. Lamar Duberly was no ordinary man. He was ex-military, having attended the prestigious U.S. Naval Academy and the Marine Corps University, and even worked at the Pentagon. His impressive background extended into corporate management, where he met Amanda. While they both worked at Fanatics, a sportswear company, as Amanda's marriage with James began to unravel. She and Lamar grew closer, eventually starting a relationship after her separation. So it was no surprise that when Amanda discovered her home ransacked on that fateful Thursday morning, Lamar was the first person she called, along with Lindy and Rachel. He rushed to Amanda's side, determined to comfort her and help restore a sense of safety in the home that now felt so violated. Amanda led her friends through the house, showing them the unsettling damage done to her property. Lamar, taking charge, showed Rachel the damage in the garage, while Anda and Lindy remained upstairs trying to make sense of the situation. The air was thick with tension and unease as Lamar and Rachel returned to the living room, unaware that the day's troubles had only just begun. What had started as a morning of shock and confusion was quickly spiraling into something far more sinister, and none of them could have predicted the devastating events that were about to unfold. The attacker was none other than Amanda's estranged husband James, in a horrific turn of events. James stormed into the house that had once been a symbol of their family's happiness and opened fire on Rachel and Lamar. The sound of gunshots shattered the peaceful quiet of the morning, echoing through the home that had once been filled with laughter and warmth. Windows exploded under the impact of the bullets as James aimed to kill, turning the place where they had shared so many memories into a scene of terror and violence. What had once been a sanctuary was now a battleground, and the lives of those inside were hanging by a thread. James was in the backyard, gun in hand, his rage palpable as he shouted over and over, "Where is he? Where is he?" Lamar quickly understood the terrifying reality. James, Amanda's strange husband, was hunting for him as Amanda's new boyfriend. Lamar was the target of James's fury, driven by a jealous rage that had pushed him to the brink. Their realization hit Lamar like a wave. James was armed, unhinged, and determined to exact revenge. Every second counted as Lamar grappled with the knowledge that his life was in imminent danger, with James ready to pull the trigger without hesitation in a desperate bid to save everyone. Lamar yelled for them to run, had bolted out of the house, racing through the garage and ducking under the door, as it opened just enough for him to escape. He sprinted between two houses in the cul-de-sac, his heart pounding as he tried to put as much distance as possible between himself and the armed man on a rampage. Meanwhile, Amanda and Lindy, we were further from the exit, found themselves trapped with no way out. Their only option was to retreat into the master bedroom. Rachel, sensing the danger, followed them upstairs in a panic. Amanda hid herself in the bathroom, hoping the door would shield her from the violence. Outside, Rachel and Lindy, with no other place to go, quickly barricaded themselves inside the closet, praying that the flimsy barrier would be enough to protect them from the wrath of an enraged James. The once peaceful home had turned into a fortress of fear. With each second, feeling like an eternity as they waited in terror, hoping to survive the nightmare unfolding around them. Lindy crouched behind a chest of drawers inside the master closet, her heart racing as she tried to make herself as small and inconspicuous as possible. Rachel, trembling with fear, did her best to barricade the closet door frantically, pushing against it, with whatever she could find, knowing it might be their only defense. Meanwhile, James had entered the house, his footsteps heavy and deliberate as he moved through the once familiar space now driven by a murderous rage. If James was searching for Lamar, hadn't yet realized that Lamar had already made his escape. Instead, he was coming up the stairs, gun in hand, his anger palpable as he drew closer to the master bedroom. The sound of his approach echoed in the terrified silence each step, heightening the tension. Rachel and Lindy, trapped in the closet, could only hold their breath in hope that the flimsy barricade would be enough to keep them safe from the man who was now only feet away, intent on finding his target. Rachel could hear James in the bathroom, his voice raised in a frenzied conversation with Amanda. The tension was unbearable. As Lindy, with shaking hands, dialed 911. Mar, you need to paramedics. I think he shot everybody. He has a hand on, he's shooting. Everybody that jeer, I'm just so scared. I'm scared he's going to come try to find me. Please. The call was made at 10:36 a.m., a lifeline in the midst of what had become a terrifying ordeal. The women were in grave danger, trapped with a man who was clearly unraveling before their very eyes. James, consumed by his rage, was screaming at Amanda, demanding to know, where is he in his frenzy? He hadn't realized that Lamar had already fled, leaving only his estranged wife and her friends behind. Amanda, trying to calm the situation, told him she didn't know where Lamar was, thought the truth likely mattered little. To James, in his unhinged state, the minutes dragged on each one, more terrifying than the last as they all waited to see what James would do next, hoping against hope that help would arrive in time. Rachel, paralyzed with fear, huddled in the closet beside Lindy, who was desperately talking to the 911 operator. The two women had no idea what had happened to Amanda, whether her enraged husband had already shot and killed her, or if she was still trying to reason with him. The uncertainty was suffocating. James had been frantically searching for Lamar, his anger boiling over in a quest for revenge. But Lamar was long gone, having escaped moments before James stormed into the house. Rachel and Lindy could only imagine what James would do once he realized that his intended target was no longer there. Would he turn his fury on them, desperate to lash out at anyone in his path? The fear of the unknown of what might happen next made every second in that closet feel like an eternity. They held their breath, waiting, hoping against hope that they would survive the nightmare that had descended upon their once peaceful world, fearing for her life and in agonizing pain from the bullet wound. Rachel instinctively backed away from the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't hold the door any longer, and in her weakened state, she allowed James to slam it open, but to her shock, James didn't even glance in her direction. His rage was single-minded, focused entirely on Lindy, who was still in her knees, desperately clutching the phone as she pleaded for help with the 911 operator. James stormed past Rachel, his eyes locked on Lindy. The sheer force of his fury was terrifying, and Rachel, helpless and wounded, could only watch. Ash approached Lindy with deadly intent. The room, once a place of refuge, had become a scene of utter horror As James closed in on his next victim, his anger unrelenting and his actions driven by a terrifying sense of vengeance in a desperate bid for her life. Rachel fled, the house her arm throbbing from the bullet wound. She ran as fast as she could, searching for someone, anyone who could help. She managed to find refuge in the home of a mutual friend, her heart racing as she tried to process the chaos she had just escaped. Meanwhile, Lamar, who'd already evaded James's wrath, came across someone else who immediately called 911 for help. But by the time the police arrived, it was too late. James Coley Jr. had already fled the scene, leaving behind a horrific trail of destruction. Rachel had been wounded in the arm, but miraculously Lamar wasn't harmed. Tragically, both Lindy and Amanda were not so fortunate. Lindy had been shot 3 times, and Amanda had suffered 9 gunshot wounds. The sheer brutality of the attack was staggering. James had shot Amanda once before, breaking into the closet where Lindy and Rachel were hiding after killing Lindy first. He unleashed his fury on Amanda, firing 8 more shots into her with a 9mm handgun until it ran out of bullets, then switching to a .45 caliber pistol he had brought as a backup. The level of rage James harbored against his estranged wife was horrifying, evident in the brutal and calculated way he carried out the murders. But why had it come to this? James had been consumed by jealousy, driven to madness by the thought of his wife moving on with Lamar. What had once been a marriage filled with hopes and dreams had devolved into a nightmare, culminating in this senseless tragedy. The rage that led James to murder his wife and her friend was fueled by a toxic mix of jealousy and despair. But how had it spiraled to such a horrific, and the answers lay buried in the disintegration of a relationship that had once been filled with promise. No, forever marred by the devastating events of that fateful morning. Not much is known about the early days of James and Amanda's relationship in 2015. Amanda was 36 a year older than James, born in Orlando, Florida. Amanda had built a successful professional life for herself and was surrounded by a close-knit circle of friends she was known for. Her warmth, ambition, and the vibrant energy she brought to her work and social life. James on the surface appeared to be equally accomplished. He worked in the mortgage industry, where he carved out a respectable career. He and Amanda seemed like a well-matched pair, both thriving in their respective fields and leading what appeared to be a successful life together. James was a man who outwardly seemed ordinary, dedicated to his work and family, loved by those close to him. His sister Crystal was especially fan of him, always speaking highly of her brother. But beneath the surface there were complexities in their relationship that were not visible to the outside world. The cracks in their marriage, once seismal and perhaps unnoticed, eventually widened into an abyss that neither could cross as their relationship unraveled. The pain and frustrations that had been simmering for years came to a tragic and violent head, revealing a side of James that noon not even those closest to him could have anticipated. But beneath the surface of this seemingly loving father lay a dark side and a troubled past. While James outwardly presented himself as a devoted husband and father, there were aspects of his life and personality that remained hidden from public view. The man who appeared to be the picture of normalcy had in reality struggled with demons that he kept tightly concealed over time. These hidden struggles began to surface, revealing a darker, more volatile side of James that few had witnessed. This undercurrent of anger and unresolved issues contributed to the gradual disintegration of his marriage to Amanda, ultimately leading to the tragic events that would forever alter the lives of those involved. The loving father and successful professional was in reality a man grappling with the darkness that would eventually consume him and devastate those around him. There was a time when the tension between James and Amanda reached a breaking point, a moment seared into the memory of their child armament when violence erupted before their very eyes. The cracks in their relationship, which had been deepening for some time, finally split wide open. When James was caught in a moral affair, the revelation hit Amanda hard, and the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long finally erupted. In a storm of fury, the child recalls one night vividly, a night when the simmering tension boiled over into violence. Amanda, her emotions raw and uncontained, sat on the stairs with a baseball bat clutched tightly in her hands. Her grip was firm, her resolve unshakable. Without a word, she rose and began hitting James with the bat. Each blow fueled by a mixture of betrayal, hurt, and anger. But the violence didn't end there on Thanksgiving. The day meant for family and gratitude. Another confrontation ensued. Amanda arrived at the house, her determination unyielding. James, perhaps anticipating another outburst, tried to keep her from entering, but Amanda was relentless. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed a knife, the situation escalating to a terrifying level. These moments marked the descent of their relationship into a place of darkness and chaos where love was overshadowed by betrayal and anger. The violence that erupted between them was a harrowing sign of just how far things had deteriorated, a tragic prelude to the even greater devastation that would later unfold. James had witnessed firsthand the aggression stemming from his father's extramarital affair, with his mother's anger boiling over into physical violence that he could not avoid seeing. These early experiences, where he saw his mother physically attack his father, likely left a deep imprint on his psyche, a traumatic imprint that, as a defense lawyer might argue, could have influenced his later actions. The violence he witnessed in his childhood may have planted seeds of unresolved anger and a distorted view of relationships and conflict. By August 27, 2015, James and Amanda were already separated, having been apart for months. Despite the separation, the unresolved issues and lingering emotions between them simmered just below the surface. While their outward lives continued, the impact of James's past and the escalating tensions in their relationship were like a ticking time bomb. The events of that day were not merely a result of recent frustrations, but a culmination of long-standing issues shaped by the past and brought to a tragic head in their final confrontation. James was not only grappling with the disintegration of his marriage, but was also involved with someone else. During this time, his relationship with Amanda had become increasingly toxic, marked by escalating aggression and jealousy, partly over Lamar's presence in Amanda's life. Despite their separation, James was consumed by a disproportionate rage. The thought of Amanda moving on a few months before the murders, a neighbor sent James a photo of Lamar mowing Amanda's lawn without a shirt on, an image that seemed to ignite his fury. This incident triggered a torrent of abusive texts and voicemails, directed at Amanda, messages that continued to escalate right up until the day of the murders. In one of these messages, James texted Amanda, "Oh, and your boyfriend has been parking at the playground and walking around the back. The whole neighborhood knows. You should just have him park out front." Like Amaya, everyone knows what you are. Don't worry. I will speak with him face to face. Sooner than later, Amanda, trying to defuse the situation, responded. He's not my boyfriend. Like I've told you before, he helps me with the yard work, paint moving furniture, etc. But James, refusing to believe her, replied, so why doesn't he park in the driveway if he isn't hiding, and I guess he is married, right? I have a pic of him. These text messages were thinly veiled threats, an ominous precursor to the violence that was about to unfold. James had a history of acting on these threats. Amanda had already secured a domestic violence injunction against him, which he had violated by taking her clothes from her house and setting them on fire in the yard. Despite this blatant violation, James appeared in court on the morning of August 27th. Calmond collected less than an hour before. He would commit the horrific murders of his wife and her friend. The contrast between his courtroom demeanor and the violent rage he unleashed afterward weighs a chilling reminder of the darkness that had been festering within him, culminating in a tragic and brutal end. James exhibited deeply contradictory behavior in the days leading up to the murders on August 26th, just one day before the tragedy. He sent Amanda a text that seemed conciliatory, saying, "Please try to start forgiving me so we can move on. I really miss you and our family being together." But this apparent plea for reconciliation was quickly overshadowed by another invasive and aggressive act around 4 and Spurs AM. On August 27th, James broke into Amanda's house searching for evidence that she was seeing someone new, fueled by jealousy and rage. He found what he was, looking for adult toys and men's clothing, and in a fit of anger he ransacked the house when Amanda returned home later, that morning at 9:01 a.m. She was confronted with a terrifying scene of destruction. It was this shocking discovery that led her to call Rachel and Lindy, inviting them over for what would tragically be their final moments after vandalizing her belongings. James texted Amanda again, his tone shifting from rage to desperation. "You're an awesome person. Don't take me from my kids. It's all I have. Call me or I'm gonna come find you." This ominous message was one of the last communications he would have with her before committing the ultimate act of violence, though Amanda did call him, leading to an argument at 9:41 a.m. Just in minutes after James left the courthouse, it didn't deter him from following through on his threats from the courthouse. James made a series of stops, first to a gas station, then to his sister's house where he had been staying, and finally back to the gas station, Toby Fuel. During this time, he must have armed himself with 2 handguns, a 9mm and a .45 caliber. As by the time he raked Amanda's house, he was fully equipped to carry out his deadly intentions. On his way to Amanda's, James made a call to his father, a dog walker nearby, overheard the conversation, later testifying that she heard James's father pleading with him, please, son, come back and get your truck. Everybody knows what you've been through to this." James responded in a voice filled with despair. "I just can't take this anymore. These final moments leading up to the murders paint a harrowing picture of a man driven to the edge by a combination of jealousy, anger, and unresolved emotional turmoil. Despite his outward pleas for reconciliation, James was caught in a downward spiral that ended in unimaginable violence, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. When James arrived at Amanda's house, he parked on an adjacent street and approached from the rear. Discarding all caution, his intentions were clear. Ash opened fire on Rachel and Lamar in the living room. a man on a terrible mission who wouldn't stop until 2 people lay dead after brutally killing Lindy and Amanda. James fled the scene, leaving behind 2 witnesses: Rachel, who was mildly injured, and Lamar, who had miraculously escaped unharmed. The police, aware of the severity of the situation, immediately launched a manhunt to capture him later that same night. James was found in Norton, Virginia. His reckless driving had nearly run another vehicle off the road, prompting the driver to call 911. She described the frightening encounter, saying he was stopped in the middle of the road. "I had to stop. He was on me. My kids are scared. My mom had to sit in the back of my car to keep them calm. They're scared. And have a newborn." Norton police quickly responded and stopped James in his car. Was found in possession of several firearms. A background check revealed that he was wanted for homicide in Florida, and he was arrested on the spot. James was subsequently charged with multiple counts, including the first-degree murder of Amanda Coley, the first-degree murder of Lindy Dobbins, the attempted first-degree murder of Rachel Hendrick, the attempted first-degree murder of Lamar Duberly, burglary with assault battery, burglary of a dwelling, and aggravated stalking after an injunction during the trial. The defense argued that the attack had not been premeditated and that James had been in an aggravated, emotional state, possibly under the influence of ambient alcohol or other drugs, and experiencing parasomnia, effectively sleepwalking. However, this defense was significantly weakened by the fact that just an hour and a half before the killings, James had appeared in court during that hearing. He had denied being under the influence of any intoxicants and responded sensibly and reasonably to the injunction proceedings. This directly contradicted the defense's claim that he was in an altered state due to substance use the night before. Further undermining the defense's case was footage and testimony that painted a different picture. The jury, after considering all the evidence unanimously, found James Colley Jr. guilty on all counts. They also recommended the death penalty, unanimously based on 4 aggravating factors proven. Beyond a reasonable doubt, he had been previously convicted of another capital or violent felony applicable, because he had committed multiple murders and attempted murders simultaneously. He committed the murders while also engaging in burglary. Murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. He committed each murder coldly, callously, and with premeditation. The medical examiner's testimony was particularly harrowing, revealing that Amanda was conscious throughout the entire ordeal, suffering 9 gunshot wounds before she finally succumbed. The sheer brutality of the crime left a lasting impact on all who heard the details. In November 2018, James was sentenced to death. He appealed the sentence, but in 2020 his appeal was denied and his death sentence was upheld. He remains on death row. Meanwhile, the 2 children he had with Amanda are now living with their grandparents, and Lindy Dobbins' 3 children, who were 16 and N at the time of the murders, continue to live with their father, the scars of this tragedy run deep, leaving behind a legacy of pain and loss for the families involved. How do you think, James? The legacy of pain and loss. Colley Jr.'s traumatic past and the violence he witnessed in his childhood influenced his actions leading up to the tragic events of August 27, 2015. What could have been done differently to prevent the escalation of aggression and ultimately the horrific outcome in the Key Dobbins case?